All right, welcome everybody. My name is Matt Albritton. I'm the director of the School of the Arts here at NKU. This is the first of our kind of virtual open houses that we are trying out. We call these SOTA Saturdays. So just a little bit of time on your Saturday morning to learn a little bit more about the School of the Arts and NKU. Hopefully there's some potential interested students out there, art teachers from the area. I know Joan's group is here as well. So welcome, everyone. School of the Arts here at NKU, there's 3 units within the school. There's music, visual arts, and theater and dance. We've got about 900 majors and minors. And we like to think of ourselves as sort of the creative engine of NKU, all of the visual and performing arts under under 2 roofs. We have a couple of buildings here on campus. Every year, we host about 120 events, give or take, about 30,000 patron visits in a non-pandemic year, anyway. A little bit different this past year, as everything has been. So there's always something going on here in the School of the Arts. And today, we're going to highlight just one of those things. And it's a pretty amazing thing. And so we have a couple of special guests here, and I want to highlight a new space that we have here in the school. Thanks to a generous donor, we have completely redesigned one of our public spaces to be a public outreach gallery. So we call it the Community Outreach Atrium, and I'll take you through that space here in a minute. And we have a really timely, really amazing exhibition in that space right now. And I've got 2 special guests here to kind of take us through that. We'll see if I can conquer the technology here with a little bit of your help. But I do want to introduce our guests. The exhibition is called The Emotional Force of Race. So one of the things we want to do with this new space is host exhibitions from the community, from on campus, across campus, from our own students that spark community conversations. And this is an extremely important conversation for us all to have right now. The exhibition is called The Emotional Force of Race, and it showcases a lot of the artwork that has been created for a long-term project undertaken by Joan Ferrante, who has taught sociology here at NKU for many, many years. That's called the MCRC project. And that stands for the Mourning the Creation of Racial Categories. So it's like I said, it's a very timely exhibition. You know, what we hope that this space sparks community conversations and deep thinking. Unfortunately, again, with the pandemic, we haven't been able to have kind of bigger groups go through the space. But the exhibition is up, and we are extending it through the end of February. So you can come through this space, and hopefully the work on the wall and the questions posed, which we'll talk about in a minute, will really spark some deeper thought and a different way of thinking about things. So with that, I want to introduce Joan Ferrante, who's here with us today. Joan, do you want to say hello?
Hello, it's nice to be here and tell you a little, share a little bit about the Emotional Force of Race, which was curated in true collaboration with India Hackle, who's also India SOTA Hackle, who's also joining me to present. She's now at Cornell University, so she's zooming in from New York.
And India, do you want to say hello and tell us what the temperature is outside where you are?
Hi, it's cold as hell as usual. It's snowing, and it's nice to be with you all here today.
I'll walk out. So I'm here in the art building, and this house is the bulk of what we do. We have a satellite space that houses our sculpture and ceramics. Just going to quickly go outside again. I want to do a little virtual tour for folks who maybe haven't been able to come to campus. And this is right outside of the Corbett space. So the Corbett is our proscenium theater, where we host all of our big productions. And this space we use when the weather's a little bit better to move a lot of our classes outside to have performances, music, theater, out here with this lovely amphitheater and grass. Go in here, sort of the main part of campus here. And into the School of the Arts. And hopefully I didn't lock myself out. And we'll come in, and this is where our new space is. Again, our safety protocols have kept us all safe here on campus. But this gives a really good view of the new space. So there's where we just were out there. This work has been really fantastic. Hi, guys. How are you? Excellent. Coming through the upper lobby here. And again, down. The space highlights collaboration, which is one thing that we do very well at NKU. So not only in SOTA, but across campus. And this is a very collaborative work that Joan's been working on, and many of our faculty and students have participated in this. It also gets out to the community and starts these conversations that we want to have, like I talked about before.
All right. Well, we've organized this according to questions. The title of it is The Emotional Force of Race. And there's 7 questions and 7 walls. And we try to answer the question visually and through description under each of the art pieces or various kinds of, you'll see a range of art is in here, different kinds of medium. So the first question that launches it is, in the United States, how do we determine who is Black and who is white? And India and I are just going to pick 2 images out of each piece and give a part of an answer. And if you're curious to learn more, then you just go to the MCRC website and you can see the whole exhibition virtual or come in to campus and, and follow socially distant protocol. The image that India chose one image and I chose an image, and the image that I chose of probably about 15 is the photographs taken by W.E.B. Du Bois around 1900. And these photographs, every person that you see in the photographs is legally classified as Black. And it presents the question, how do we determine who is Black and who is white? Just by looking at these images, you're asked, how is this possible given our understanding of white and Black? So after you look at that a little bit, we'll go to one image that may provide part of an answer.
So with this image, they tried determining who was white and who was Black by using blood fractions. So lawmakers use blood fractions to try and keep people out of the white category. A person with 1/4, 1/8, 1/16, 1/64, or even 1/128 of so-called Black blood could be legally classified as Black. And this image represents a family tree of someone who would be technically and theoretically 1/32 Black.
And can you guys talk a little bit about how do you solicit the artwork for the project?
We just do call for participations. We've had about 4 since 2016. Then we get together, much as we're doing today. This weekend, we're having a launch of a creative team, and we learn about everybody's talents, and people, contribute ideas to how we can illustrate the story of race. And of course, we tell it in other ways too, besides art, visual art. We do theater, dance, sculpture, poetry. So this workshop, this exhibition, I think reflects the work of about 150 people who've been involved with the MCRC project. And it's just a culmination of artwork that we've created or collected over this 4-year period of time. And I hesitate to say student, faculty, and community artists because it implies kind of a ranking system. And I just like to call us really as collaborative artists. Really, the divisions by title disappear when we work together. The next question is, how did white become the free and black the enslaved? And we chose 2 images for this piece. One is an image where you see 3 men running away, running from something. And one is a Dutchman, and the other, I believe, is a Scotsman. And then you have an African descended person that you see, the third person. They're running away as friends. They're all 3 indentured servants. They're running away from their master. I love this image because it's a time in history before race, pre-racial, when the 3 are essentially equal in status as indentured servants, and they're running away as friends, and they're running away as equals. And then something happens, which I'll turn over to India to describe the next piece to kind of show what this means, how black became the enslaved and white the free.
So this is an image of John Punch. And since it was 3 friends who ran away together, but one was black identifying, who was John Punch, he was the only one to receive a sentence to be enslaved for life. And difference in the system, in the sentencing, that was a prime example of how enslavement was imposed specifically on African peoples, making black and enslavement synonymous.
Yes, and the white appearing people got 4 years added on to their term of indentured servitude, and he was made an enslaved for life. And that created the division that we have not recovered from yet in our country.
And this is a painting by Kevin Minty, who is a painting professor here in the School of the Arts.
The next question is, when words are inadequate, how can the arts help us feel the emotions of race? And, actually work through the emotions of race. We're going to look at the image of the Garner, the murder scene. Garner family that NKU artists created. Keep moving a little bit over. Let's see, there we go.
All right.
Okay. This image represents the Garner family story. And in the image you see to the left are 4 men, deputies, and the owner of Margaret Garner, an enslaved woman, breaking down the door because the family has run away toward freedom. If you move to the family standing, you'll see that is Margaret Garner, representation of Margaret Garner, her husband, Robert, a child, Scylla, who appears white, and two of Margaret's sons, one of whom is believed to be Robert's son. The others are the master's children, likely. And then there's a child on the floor. Margaret took matters into her own hands because she did not want her children returning to enslavement. So she tried to kill all of them and then herself. And the child on the floor is Mary, 2 years old, who she succeeded in killing. The other 3, she just managed to wound. So she didn't get to reach her goal of not allowing her children to return to enslavement. So that's one image. We'll turn now to it. It's kind of companion image that was created in 1856 or so.
So our goal was to correct the illustration by Thomas Noble. This is the image by Thomas Noble done in 1867. And it's one of the only officially known images of the Garner story. And compared to the image that we just saw you that we created for MCRC, notice that in this image, that Margaret's Black appearing husband, Robert, is not by her side as it was recorded in news, but instead he is laying dead on the ground. Also notice the other Black appearing body dead on the ground. And that dead body is supposed to be Margaret's white appearing daughter, Mary. But instead, Mary and Margaret's wife, Scylla, are missing from the scene completely.
And our goal was to ask the question, why have we accepted this image of the Garner's incorrect image of the Garner story for 156 years? And our team recreated the image as best from news accounts as best we can of what the scene should have looked like or might have looked like, very drastically different. The why white question is why, it makes you think, why do we call European ancestred people white and call African ancestred people Black? And I think everybody wonders that question quite often, actually. And this collage tries to tell the story of how white was created. And we can think of the Europeans as picking a color that, and I'll move to the image above, actually this one, picking a color to define themselves that has symbolic meaning that suggests purity and enlightenment and spotlessness, and then assigning that name to themselves in a complex way. I mean, we can't get into all that history here. And white, for people, already has very, very deep associations of purity and cleanliness. And so the Europeans took that name, white, and the associations that come with it as well also comes to the name of what their category is called.
And then the name and the label white was further reinforced through the opposite labels and associations applied to the Black evoked and evokes unshakable associations with darkness, evil, death, danger, and sin. White used and needed Black to know and define itself as white.
The next set of images is white is the standard. What does that mean? And we hear that all the time. That's why we tackled that subject is how do we think about that? And if we have it right here, India, you're moving first, right?
Yeah, if we can go to the image with the pearl divers. Yeah, so we decided to focus on the story of enslaved African pearl divers specifically, and how their story is an example of how white sets and is the standard. So Africans were captured, sold, and enslaved as underwater divers who would collect pearls, anchors, cargo off sunken ships, and other treasures like underwater. And it is recorded that African peoples could dive 90 or more feet deep and hold their breath for 9 or more minutes. But white identifying scientists deemed these abilities as animal-like and said deep diving was an activity done by unsophisticated people who splashed and thrashed around in the water. And white religious leaders also deemed swimming immoral because it was typically done nude.
This is just one illustration of how a standard's created to judge others, and white European lens was put across the world, and it was used to evaluate everything in the world. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say that. And here you see a white appearing swimmers, and notice their rigid kind of positioning. They're swimming, toes pointed, body rigid, hands pointed. And this was a standard set for swimming, and you should do it with clothes on. It was juxtaposed against the idea that the African divers, were inferior, and that white was too superior to swim in the way that they did. So, of course, you have to see the whole, exhibit to learn more about it. But that's an example of white as the standard. So the next one is, if you do not identify as black or white, where do you fit into the conversation about race? And we're going to go to India's going to take us to the Native Americans collage of various peoples.
So the American Indian category is one example of how a diverse group of peoples are forced to identify as one race. There's about 2,000 distinct tribes that have been forced into one category. And we put this collage together because despite the category's diversity, it is associated with one stereotypical image, and any deviation from the stereotype calls people to ask, are you really American Indian?
As India, just suggested to make these categories, the United States, these are the official categories of the United States, put diverse peoples that often didn't have a language in common, a culture in common, a history in common, together into one category. And we kind of bought into it, that it's real. And this is the map of every origin of peoples that the United States considers Asian. And it's a total of 63 countries. People from these areas of the world would be classified as Asian. The original peoples will say your ancestors were part of the original peoples of Asia. That's what Asia is. And so you see that we've crammed into that one category people from that diverse of a geography. And we've done that, actually, if you think about it, to all the categories. All the European countries became white. So it's quite a story how we all bought into that we are one thing. The last question is, how did white become the pure category and black the contaminated one? And this is very deep in US history, where black was always presented as something that could contaminate and take away from white. And we're just going to look at the 1/128th image, kind of bring us full circle to what we looked at earlier, only we're going to see 1/128th here. And maybe not. Anyway, I'll take something else then.
It may have self-edited off the wall.
Yeah,
so
it may have done that. But we'll still go back to look at, we'll go to this. That's a good idea to go back to this.
It's very similar to this one, right?
Yeah, very similar, only this was 1/32nd. And we made another art piece that was 1/128. So you could imagine this one lone figure, dark figure, would contaminate a whole family tree. I mean, think about creating the categories in that way. So it was thought of that white would lose its status if there was one relative in their family tree, the 1/128th variety. So that takes us then to the next piece that India will discuss.
We chose this to show that in a society where black could be defined as having 1/64th or 1/128th, or even just one drop of black blood, proved that there was a panic to not taint whiteness. This sign speaks to a history that still haunts us today. There is no doubt that the US was built around creating and preserving white spaces, bodies, and lifestyles by any means necessary.
Thank you, India. Thank you, Joan, for taking us through.
Thank you.
An important conversation to have. And again, it really, I think, takes advantage of this new space that we have. It was the perfect inaugural exhibition to highlight, not only the conversation to have, but highlight how the arts can contribute and that collaborative spirit that is so prevalent at NKU. So with that, are there any questions? Or Joan, India, do you guys want to sort of do a little wrap up of the show? Are you pleased with how it's been as far as just having it up on the walls and maybe thinking about the project in a different way? It has been a little bit difficult because, our original idea is to bring the community in and into the space to interact with it and with others, but pandemic had other plans for that. So what are your thoughts about seeing all of the art? Was the first exhibition you've had of sort of a lot of the artwork?
Yeah, I'm sad that I couldn't see it in person, but thank you for this additional towards what we already have. Just with everything with COVID, of course, it threw everything off, but I'm very, very grateful that we were able to have the virtual tour and have all these pieces in one place now. When we are having the call for participation and having the workshops, there's so much created that sometimes you can lose sight of like what everyone has done. And so it was so nice to have that in one space.
If you go to the virtual tour, we put the credits for everyone involved in each of the 7 segments. And it really is, India and I are the face of this, today, but we're representing, I want to say 125, 150 people who've helped us think through race using this lens of how the categories were created. And I think this is a good overview of that with the help of so many artists and thinkers. I'm really proud of this creation, really. It's very unique. We have a very unique lens, the MCRC does, in its look at, to understand our tensions today, we have to understand how they've been built for 400 years. And you got a little glimpse of that today by just the images that we picked out. It is hard to shake the tensions behind the creation of these categories.
I think you're embracing of using all kinds of different artistic mediums and all different kinds of artists has been really wonderful to see. I know that the students that have participated in it really appreciate your approach and philosophy that you're not a student artist and I'm going to keep you here, and then the faculty or the professional artists are here and here. It's all the same. All of that work is valid, and all of those insights and questions brought up a lot of times by the artwork are just as valid to the project and just as important to the project as anything else. So I know I really appreciate that. I know our students really appreciate that as well. That have been involved.
Yep. And I would like to also add that, people of all racial classifications are part of this project. And India and I curated it in the sense, we picked things out and we made the language that you see underneath it. I can't explain the joy of working with someone from another racial category that our country has separated us into categories. And I wish in a way we taped things that we worked through to get a language that was a joint understanding of race. That has been the joy of MCRC is we try to understand MCR jointly and bring all the categories together to understand our story.
Yeah, and it is not it's not a straightforward, easy conversation to have. And that's why I think all of these different approaches and all this different artwork is so important. One of the things that we've been talking about a lot here in SOTA are all of the sort of essential skills that come with studying the arts. And we've kind of coalesced them into a bunch of C's. We're up to 6 now. So communication, collaboration, and that is on showcase here, absolutely. Critical thinking, thinking about this conversation in a whole different way. Creativity, of course. And then connection. That is what we're trying to do here as well, is to find this connection that's so important now, more than ever, with how polarized and divided everything is. And then finally, actually in a conversation with our former provost, she added a 6th C for us to think about, and that's courage. And I really love that, that final kind of C that tops everything off. it does take courage to confront these issues. It takes courage to put yourself out there. It takes courage to have these conversations. And if we don't bring that courage to the table, then we're just stuck with the status quo. And that's not going to help us move forward. So I appreciate the courage of both Joan, you and India, taking this conversation on in all these different creative ways, and with everybody that has participated in the project. And you can still participate. So, we can put a little plug here. If you want to participate in this and add your little bit to the conversation, you can absolutely do that. So how can folks out there listening or watching this later, how can they do that, John?
They could contact me at, ferrantej@nku.edu. And I will mention, I have my creative team right now for this. We're working on the other racial categories, sandwiched in between black and white. All together, in anything that we create, they probably bring in another 40 or 50 people that do things, like I want to say specific kinds of tasks that we need, whether it's composing music or, making a specific art piece. We might end up bringing in actors because we've thought of something that our creative team wants to do. So because a team is in the works right now, doesn't mean you can't pick up and join, especially if you feel intensely about this idea, this project called MCRC.
Definitely go visit the website. It's in the chat there. It's also on the SOTA Saturdays webpage. There's virtual tours of this, and then links to the fuller project online. And there's films that are a part of this. There are dance pieces that are a part of this. It's really expansive and extremely engaging. So I encourage anybody to go there and check it out.
I had a question I'm new to the project, and I know we're going to be talking about like the words that come to our mind when we think of the MCRC project, but I wanted to ask you, India, Joan, and Matthew, what word comes to your mind when you think of how the racial categories originated? I'm thinking of like, which one stands out the most? Like, and I might not even have the word here on my list. Power, politics, fear, greed, religion. What word do you think was the one that maybe you think started all of this?
I think fear is always a potent driving force. We think back through the history of politics, human history, just this othering of people that aren't the same, and a lot of that starts with fear and I think a misunderstanding.
If I had to go with the word, we call it's. I have sorrow there. I mean, MCRC does take a sorrowful approach. And you go back to the three servants running away, and then you see John Punch. Those two images are very powerful for me in the story, and those two images alone say more than my words can say. And maybe it's because I'm a white classified lens on things. I just feel so for these three guys that they ran away, and what were they thinking? Like, hey, we're buddies, we're friends, and then that separation where they could never come back together again when one's enslaved and the others are 4 years. That really sticks in my head and maybe is a driving image for me. And then, of course, we sandwiched all the categories between these two, the other categories. I just think sorrow.
I'll second Matt with fear, because I think that there was a great fear not to want to turn into self as a category, because like nothing was there to turn to. And I think that that's still carrying on with not having a story, or at least not knowing your place in the story. So I think that, I don't know how to say this, like out of a cowardly behavior, because it's the choosing of freedom. I just think that it was fearful. I think white was fearful to look at itself, so it looked onto everyone else.
Well, I really appreciate you spending some of your Saturday with us here today. We're going to continue on these SOTA Saturday sort of virtual tours, moving the next 3 Saturdays to concentrate a little bit more on each of our programs. Starting next week, music, we'll do a tour of the music facilities, and then any questions about scholarships or applications or anything like that, we'll address. We also have student councils that will talk. So we have a music student council, and they'll be on next week to talk about, from their perspective, what's it like being a music major here in the School of the Arts at NKU, to give that insight and answer any questions that are out there. So thank you all. Special thanks to Joan and India. Love the exhibition. I'm excited that we can extend it one more month, and hopefully get folks coming up and thinking about these issues and really deeply grappling with them as your project does so. So thank you guys. Have a great weekend. Stay warm and stay dry.
Thanks, everybody.